Welcome to Alligator Preserves, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue, and I have with me today award-winning author Helen Starbuck. She returns to Alligator Preserves. I interviewed her, I don't know how many years ago, Helen. It's been a while, but we are going to talk about her grip your seat new novel, The Killer Without a Face. Helen, welcome back to Alligator Preserves.
Thank you. I always enjoy coming on and chatting with you. It's fun.
I enjoy chatting with you too, and it's been a while. I missed last year's Georgetown Christmas market where I probably could have seen you. Yes.
Yes, yes. It's probably been a couple years.
It's been a couple years. Well, let's give our audience a little elevator pitch on your new novel. What should they expect when they pick this up today and start reading it?
I would say it's a woman's journey from a sort of passive doing what other people need and want to finding out who she is and what she can do and arriving at a place where she's been very hardly tested and come out of it and has sort of this new confidence to her.
Yeah, and I'll just read a little bit of the blurb on the back. If you like intriguing characters, gut-wrenching twists, and undercurrents of romance, then you'll love award-winning author Helen Starbuck's tense crime thriller, The Killer Without a Face. And it really is, oh my gosh, you nailed this one. Well, you nailed them all, but what do you think it is that draws you to writing this type of book, this type of crime thriller?
It has always been the kind of books I like to read and the movies and TV shows that I like to watch. So I guess that's part of it. Plus, I also like the puzzle aspect of it and the risk. And I like being surprised. So I kind of enjoy doing that in my books. Um, one of my previous books, The Women He Used to Know, I've had more than one reviewer go, I never guessed the ending. And it's like, good, that's kind of what I was hoping.
You are able to do that amazingly well. And I think while I was reading this, I might have been texting you saying, I still don't know, I still don't know, I still don't know, which is
I got a couple of those. So
you talk about TV shows. Any favorites in this genre?
I watched one recently on Prime called Troppo, Troppo. It's Australian, and it's there are points when it's really dark. And the thing that intrigued me was the two main characters. One is a young woman who was convicted of murder and sent to prison, and she's served her sentence. She was 16 when it happened, so it wasn't a life sentence. And she came back to the same town where this small town in sort of a tropical area of Australia. They don't really say exactly where. She comes back to this small town where it happened. And of course, everybody in town knew the girl she killed, and they know her and they don't like her. So there's that tension there. And then the other main character is a police detective who was jailed and then released. They couldn't charge him and take him to trial because there was a lack of evidence, but he was never officially cleared of an abduction and sexual assault on a 10 or 12-year-old girl. And he unfortunately saw the girl standing in the rain waiting for a bus to come the night she disappeared, and he stops. He shows her his badge and offers her a ride home. She gets off, he drives off, and the abduction takes place after that. So he's nobody believes him. And so now he's been released and he's come to this town to escape the scrutiny and the sort of harassment by the police force because they're sure he did it. And so you've got this tension between these two people and this small town. And they sort of unwillingly and unlikely form a bond. And has wanted to become a PI and she wants him to help her. And there have been 2 crocodile related deaths that they believe have weird circumstances. Anyway, long story short, they form this great combative duo, and they actually end up solving both crimes.
Ah,
But the setting is oppressive. Everybody's hot and sweaty, and there are crocodiles. You can't go in the river because it's infested with crocodiles, and it just it's like an 8-part series, and I'm just hooked. So
all
it's very
right. I will look into that. We enjoy watching those things too. We just started watching Monk, which is an old series.
it is.
I'm sure you probably found it, and it's kind of delightful, if I could say delightful for a murder mystery kind of thing, because you know who done it right off the
Yeah.
bat, but then you go through the process of figuring out how he figures out who done it, which is kind of the reverse of what you do. You keep readers guessing until the very end, which is again
Right.
another, yeah, well, you do. So you talk about that series and how it's in kind of a remote place and all sweaty. You go with a tiny little town somewhere in Colorado. So we're talking the opposite and very
Yeah.
cold. Did you have a specific town in mind? Alma comes to mind. South
Um,
Park, South Park comes to mind.
I just wanted it. It's not a real town. It's a completely made up place. And I didn't want to choose a recognizable setting because I think that opens you to people going, well, that's not how it is here. So I wanted it to be high enough in the mountains that the weather would be a huge factor. And it's a friend of mine used to live in Glenwood Springs, and she has friends who live about an hour from Grand Junction. And so she's one of my beta readers. And my original setting was somewhere near Glenwood. And she said, there really isn't a place in Glenwood that fits what you're talking about. She said, I have friends who live about an hour from Grand Junction and they live in a very isolated high country area. So she said, I'd move it there. And it was like, oh, great. That's why I love beta readers, Um,
Yeah, they find things that we don't, because we don't know everything on the
right.
planet, even though we think we do.
I
Well,
remember my sister on my first standalone Legacy of Secrets, she texted me and said, so where is Ardwell? And I said, it's nowhere. I just made it up. And she goes, gosh, it's so real. And I said, well, good, thank you. And so I hope this little town, and I don't name it for the same reason.
right.
you know, I don't want people going, well, there's no town up there like that,
You don't name it, and you don't have to, because it is very real. And just like your characters, oh my gosh. So I have a little sign in my guest bathroom, and it said, careful, or you'll end up in my novel. Now that I say that, I'm not sure I should have it in my bathroom, but the characters in your novel, as in all of your novels, are so real and believable and wonderful. Are any of them based on people you know?
No, not really. My main character in my mystery series, I've had more than one person who I've worked with in the past and who know me say, Annie is you. And it's like, well, yeah, she's got a lot of me, but the rest of my characters are just creations of mine. I do draw from experiences to kind of help create them, and in particular to create the flaws, which I think characters have to have. Even in romance novels, characters, somebody's got to have some issues, it's my feeling.
Right, because I mean, other than you and me, no one else is perfect. And sometimes I wonder about you. That's
Oh, I'm not.
so again, your characters, you've got quirky Irma and her dog Elmer, and Jess, the Marine who's injured and in a way hiding in his own way, right? So
Yeah.
you've got
Um,
his.
I also like my male characters to, I guess I would say, have a wound, whether it's emotional. And in this case, it's both physical and emotional. And having gone through what he went through, and having done his rehab in Denver, he just was he just felt overwhelmed by the busyness and the density of population and what he described as the chaos of Denver. And so he does want to escape. He wants somewhere where life is less complicated and more peaceful. And that's how he ends up in this little town.
And then Danny drops in her ridiculous truck. And he's kind of, wanting to be the knight in shining armor, but also very respectful and very understanding of her as someone who's injured or fleeing. He doesn't know why. So there's that. So then you have the undercurrent of romance there, and the tension between the two, because you totally captured the idea of trust and not trusting. And of course, your main character Danny, grew up with a sister who lied to her constantly to her face, and so she has lived this life of not really being able to trust anyone. And so you've got that as this tension. Take us through the process of how you put this novel together and the decisions that you had to make.
I guess it came to me first, which is often what happens, is the scene with her stranded in the truck that's broken down. She hasn't got the money to fix it or replace it. And it's just been kind of a snowball of not necessarily mistakes, but decisions that have been forced on her by being peripherally involved in the murder of her sister.
Yeah.
And so the scene of her sitting in the dark in this truck and being so frustrated, and also the being afraid of getting out of the truck and walking into the town, because she's a city girl, and at night she's heard the call of mountain lions and that kind of thing. And of course, you come back to that basic trust. She doesn't know who she'll meet on the road back to town. And so that scene to me was the start. And so for me, the first questions were, who is she? Why is she there? What's going on with this woman? And then, that's how I write. I wish in some ways I could outline, because it would make the process more linear and I imagine quicker, and it might involve less rewrites. But I can't do it with fiction. Now I can do it with professionally related articles. I worked as a clinical editor for a nursing journal and did developmental editing for nurses who want to, and I could do that with there. I could bound because surgery goes from A to Z, and how it's supposed to go. But with fiction, in my books, I may have an ending in mind, but I don't always get there. I sometimes get to a different ending, or something comes up that works better for me with the characters. So that's how this story got started. One of my other books, Finding Alex, people laugh at me, but I drive Highway 93 from North Arvada to Boulder a couple times a week for a dance class. And the highway there has these really steep drop-offs and a backdrop of a ridge of rock like formations that is called the hogback. And it looks like a dinosaur has been buried and just their back is poking out. And so, I was driving there one day and I thought, that would be a great place to dump a body. Because, it drops off and you can see stuff here, but you can't see what's down here. And then the thought popped in my head, well, what if the body wasn't dead yet? And so, that's kind of what started that story. So that's kind of how I work.
Well, I love that because I do too. I recently interviewed Peter Heller, and he said he doesn't start his novels until he hears the first line, and he
Uh,
totally writes by the seat of his pants, the scene of his pants. Never knows where it's going and how it's going to end. And I was very happy to hear that because I think maybe a lot of fiction writers do that, as you said, have the ending in mind and somehow get near there, but allow for surprises along the way, which I certainly do, which is great. I'm going
well,
to get
I have characters that don't cooperate as well. I think they're supposed to go this way, and they're like, no, I'm going this way. So I do think you have to be open to what comes to you and what changes, and not be too rigid about, nope, this is the way I want it to go.
I totally agree. And we're going to get back to characters, but you mentioned dancing and dance classes. Here's a question you might not expect. How has ballroom dancing influenced your writing?
It has put me more in touch with my body and my abilities. And I know several people from the studio that I really admire because of their pursuing dancing to help overcome physical injuries. Or there was one older gentleman who came whose wife had died and she had been in long-term care prior to that. And it was his way of getting out and meeting people. And I have another friend who probably 30 years ago was in a really bad car accident and messed up her one leg. And as she says, I wouldn't be walking today if it weren't for dancing.
Oh,
And so that has kind of reinforced to me that, yeah, awful things happen, but you can recover from them and you can turn out to open up a whole new world of people and experiences. And I think that's one of the things I see with Danny and Jess.
yeah,
They both have had difficult things happen to them. And over the course of their association and what happens as a result of her witnessing this murder, they change and they let go. She lets go of some of that mistrust, and he feels seen and not rejected because of
yeah,
his injury.
yeah.
And so I guess that's, plus it's just fun.
Fun and beautiful and yeah, and touching and irritating. Polly, what what a biatch. Can I say biatch on my show? Yes, I can say biatch.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. You again, what a character type. How did she
She,
arrive?
I wanted, I wanted somebody to stir the pot, you know, and I wanted somebody who had never been turned down. Um, and so Jess represents both frustration and this, I'm going to get him interested. I don't care what I have to do. And he's not interested, you know. He was not interested before Danny showed up. And then he's really not interested once that relationship starts to gel. And you know, there are people like that, people that love chaos, people that love to cause problems for other people in an effort to get what they want. And I do think books, mysteries and thrillers and suspense, there's got to be somebody that's causing problems, you know.
So when you were thinking about writing this book, did you have that in mind? Like there has to be another woman who's going to cause problems, or did she just appear?
I wanted somebody to cause problems for Jess and Danny. And I wanted it to be, I wanted it to relate to Danny's core mistrust.
Yeah.
People saying one thing and then doing another. And so Polly seemed like a perfect character because she manipulated the situation and caused exactly that for Danny. And then I wanted it to outrage Jess because she didn't believe him.
Yeah.
And and I wanted there to be this tension of toward the end of the book, was he going to be there for her, or was he so angry about what had happened that he wouldn't show up?
And again, in books like this, you know, you don't want them jumping in bed together the first time they meet, right? I mean, where's the fun
Uh,
in that?
you could, but you know, that's the other thing. If two characters, and because I've read a couple books where that's happened, but then it's not the start of a great relationship. It's a start of both characters go, boy, this was really a mistake. And then they, through one reason or another, have to work themselves back together. So I think in some ways you can do that. I think, and I'm generalizing here, but I think most women prefer to get to know someone first.
The slow burn.
And well, exactly. You know? And I couldn't imagine Danny with her trust issues doing something like jumping into bed with him. You know, it's just not in her nature. You know, she's an accountant. She likes things, you know, regular. She likes the sums to come out and make sense. And so that just doesn't work for her.
So there she is in this place, and Jess is, you know, he's a former Marine, and he's a bartender, and a Crime Stoppers broadcast comes out on TV, which I caught my breath because, you know, I'm thinking exactly, you know, we're supposed to think like, oh, who's going to see this? And I never
What
thought,
Jess,
right. I never thought that possibly something like a Crime Stoppers broadcast, which is supposed to be helpful, right, could actually put an innocent person in danger.
well, yeah, especially if that person had a good reason to stay hidden, stay out of the limelight. It wasn't like she was just this victim who happened to see something. Um, you know, she knew that if the killer knew she was there, then she would be next on his list to find and kill. And so she really didn't need to have that happen.
Right, right. So that, you know, again, you do a great job with adding tension in places and just, you know, making me catch my breath. And your chase scene,
Yeah.
so so dramatic, so breathtakingly frightening. Did that just come to you? Did you know that there was going to be that type of chase?
Um, Not immediately. I kind of worked toward that because all along I was thinking, okay, how is this going to play out? You know, is she going to I mean, she can't just go there and live happily ever after.
Right.
Um,
And again, we don't want any spoilers. We're not going to say anything about the
and
chaser.
so I wanted her to be really tested, um, scared out of her mind, um, and sort of fatalistic in that this is probably not going to end well. Um, and so I'll try not to give spoilers either. So I set it up that way, and then just kind of went with, again, that theme of lying to someone to get what you want, and the other person knowing that they were being lied to. So that's kind of how it worked out.
Did you know who done it from the beginning? Because a lot of people who write whodunits don't know right away. I've heard. So I've heard.
I did, and I wanted it to be that way. Um, I wanted there to be this kind of amorphous villain, that in the sections where the villain talks, you see who he is, but only there. Um, and I kind of wanted to play that off what was going on uh, all around, um, so that there would be hints, but no real reveal until the very end.
Brilliant. Beautifully
Thank you.
done. You're welcome. Um, Completely different topic. AI in writing.
Oh, no. It's a hard no for me. Now, I'm not talking about using things like spell check
Right.
or Grammarly. I'm talking about people who use AI to write books. That's not writing. And I vehemently object to the people designing AI harvesting, basically pirating creative people's works. And I don't know how that's going to end up. I have joked, although it's not much of a joke. It's like, yeah, well, think about how Terminator ended up, Skynet was AI and it was supposed to be this wonderful thing, and it ended up a complete disaster.
Yeah.
I realize I tend to be a little pessimistic about these things, but I just think if you need to use AI to write a book, then you're not a writer. And this conversation has been very prominent on Threads, the social media site, which has a lot of authors on it, primarily because NaNoWriMo, the November
National Novel Writing Month.
novel writing, yeah, has come out and said that people who are against AI are classist and ableist, because some authors don't have the time or money to write, and
Oh,
some authors have handicaps that get in their way, and people are turning off their accounts, not planning to participate in the program anymore. And for an organization who has always supported writers, I just think that's uh, an appalling stance.
oh
And
my.
I think they're gonna destroy their organization because of that.
I had no idea because I haven't signed into my NaNoWriMo account yet.
They posted a policy thing, which people have reposted on Threads, and it's disturbing, in my opinion. I always say, if you don't feel like you can write, there are a gazillion classes you can go to. You can get a mentor, you could get a developmental editor, you can join writing groups,
Yeah.
critique groups, get yourself some beta readers who will be honest with you. You don't, I wouldn't want a machine writing something that humans have to read. And from what I have seen of AI generated stuff, it's not very good.
Oh, that is disappointing to hear about NaNoWriMo because, like I said,
I yeah, I was really surprised. It's like, but you guys are supposed to be for authors. You know, so
and
I don't,
to write without editing, to write. It's just supposed to be for getting your ideas out and to write a whole bunch without going back and rethinking things and
yeah,
getting your ideas down, not someone else's ideas or not something else's ideas. Oh boy, oh
yeah,
boy. Now I'm
yeah.
fired. Now I'm fired up.
It created a real firestorm, and people are leaving uh, that organization in
Yeah.
the same way that people are leaving Twitter. It's like, yeah, no, we're not going to do this. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
All right. Speaking about shaking things up and shaking things out, and your background in nursing and in the medical fields, how have you been doing through these years of what we now know is going to be an endemic iteration of COVID for the rest of our
Well,
lives?
I got lucky because I wasn't working clinically when it hit. I know people who were, and to be a healthcare provider, especially in hospitals, was horrific. Um, and the healthcare providers who were working did an outstanding job under horrific conditions, and have nothing but admiration for them. I try not to be too inflammatory here, but I have an incredible amount of frustration with people who are anti-vax or anti-mask. And my comment about people who don't want to wear masks is, okay, the next time you have surgery, tell your surgeon and the entire surgical team you do not want them to wear masks because they don't work.
Yeah.
And when you think about that way, no, masks are not perfect. But if you wear an N90, KN95 or higher, and you can buy KN95 masks off reputable sources online,
Mhm.
if only you wear them, your risk of getting COVID drops significantly. If everybody wears them, it drops again significantly. And vaccination has made it so that people who are vaccinated aren't dying of COVID, and aren't as sick. So I don't have a lot of patience with people like that. I don't have a lot of patience with people who refuse to vaccinate their kids. Um, when I was a kid, uh, the only diseases I didn't get were smallpox, polio, and diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus, because those are the only vaccinations that were available. But my sisters and I got mumps, measles, rubella, chickenpox. I mean, whatever the childhood diseases at the time were around, we got them. And I think people who don't vaccinate for COVID and people who don't vaccinate their kids expose a lot of vulnerable people who
Yeah.
can't afford to get it.
Yeah.
Um, and that, in my mind, is criminal. And I guess I have to stop before I start foaming at the mouth.
No, I traveled recently. I flew to the East Coast and I wore an N95 mask the whole travel in all the planes and in the terminals because I knew that
Yeah,
with hundreds of thousands of people, someone's going to be sick, and you hear people coughing and sneezing and all that kind of stuff.
well,
And it made me feel better.
and they estimate 1 in 34 people have COVID. They're
Oof.
either carriers or they're active. So you get on a plane with 200 some people, you know that there are people on that plane with COVID.
Yeah.
So from I think it was 2022 was the first trip I took. I won't ride on a plane or be in a terminal without a mask on. Planes especially, because you're in this very enclosed space, and the air is recirculated, and it's just not worth the risk.
No, I'm with you on that, and I'm probably going to get a whole bunch of thumbs downs on this video. 'Cause-
Well,
but you know what? That's okay.
everybody's entitled to an opinion. However, you don't have the right to put other people at risk, and
Yeah,
that's where I draw the line.
I feel that
But
way too. Yeah.
I'm not in charge of things, and in
It,
some respects, that's probably good.
if only they would make us in charge of things, right? You and I. So,
We would do so good.
back to your The Killer Without a Face. Will you have this at this year's Georgetown Christmas Market?
I will. And I'll
And
have my other books too, but yeah, I'm going to do both Saturdays. I assume you will too. So
I
we'll
think
be
I'm
there.
probably just going to do the second Saturday. We have a local event here, I think the first weekend, but we'll see. And by the way, Jerry Fabianic, our friend who puts this on each year with the Book Nook, he's stopping by this afternoon and he wanted me to say hi to you. So hi to
Oh,
you.
you say hi to Jerry too. He's like I call him the Energizer Bunny. Because he's always got something going and he's fun to talk to. And he's just a great guy. So tell him hi.
I will. And by the way, he and I and Kelly Lindberg are putting on a 3-day workshop here in Salida in May of 2025. So if
Oh,
anyone out there listening wants more information, let me know, contact me. There's information on the Central Colorado Writers site, and there will be more. So yes, talk about his Energizer Bunny thing. We started talking about doing a workshop, and he's going to provide quite a wonderful couple of sessions while he's here. So,
okay.
what is next for Helen Starbuck, author of The Killer Without a Face and other award-winning novels? What is next for you? Would you have another one in the works?
I am working on book 5 in the Annie Collins mystery series.
Okay.
And I'm about halfway through a book about Detective Frost, who is a character that plays a major role in the mystery series. And I've had so many people say, oh, do a book about him. You know, we really like him. And so I thought, okay. So I kind of got halfway through and then it sort of, for the moment, stalled out. And that often happens. So I have to go on and do other things and then something will crop up. And I set it's been fun because I set it in 1984 when he was a young cop and wasn't in homicide yet, but he really wanted to be. And I had to keep stopping myself because every time I would pick up a cell phone, they didn't have cell phones. Most people didn't. And I connected with a homicide detective who was a patrol officer during that time. And he talked about the fact that the dispatch communicated by the cruiser's radio, but if anything came up that they had to get in touch, they had to find a phone booth and make a call from a public phone. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. And I had to research clothes, I had to research hairdos, and hairdos for women in the 1980s are like, oh my God, did I do that? So that's been fun, but the plot is giving me trouble. So but the book 5 in the series is very close to going to a proofreader. I'm still fine tuning a little bit. So that'll probably come out before the Frost book, and the title at the moment is The Weight of Guilt. So we'll see how quickly I can get through the nitty gritty and get it out there.
WAIT or WEIGHT?
WEI, the heaviness, the weight. Um, well, that's a good title too.
Well, I have full confidence that your plot will come to you because your characters will tell you where to go.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of waiting for Frost to pop in and tell me what happened, you know.
Right, right. So, what advice might you have for people who might want to write in the mystery, suspense, thriller genre?
I've always liked that quote by Stephen King, to be a good writer, you need to be a good reader. And so I would say, if that's the genre you want to write, you should like it. So my advice would be to be a voracious reader of that genre and see what authors are doing. Um, and sometimes if they have a series, it's fun to start at the beginning and see how their skill and their characters evolve. I think that's the best starting point. And then the other thing is to try your hand at writing and go to conferences that talk about the skills and find a group of people who won't just read your book and go, oh my God, this is wonderful, which relatives tend to do uh, for many reasons. You want people who will read it and go, you know, this is a great idea. And this is what I liked about it, and this is what really didn't work. And those are the people who are really valuable, who will, you know, be honest with you and constructive. Um, and I always tell the story on my third book in my series, The Burden of Hate. Um, my a very good friend called me because I had sent the book to her, and she goes, how much does our friendship depend on what I tell you? And I was like, it doesn't. What did I do wrong? And she goes, I hate the ending. I hate the ending so much that if I didn't know you, I would never read another one of your books. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And so we had this 2-hour conversation. And I talked to my editor, and she said, keep her around because I didn't really like the ending either. And it's like, well, why didn't you say something? Anyway, so I completely changed the ending. And that book got a starred review by Kirkus. And I have her to thank.
Wow.
So, you know, you need those people around. And
Yes.
I love them to death. I have this core group, and they're the ones I always go to.
Yes, honest people. And if someone asks you, if you're lucky enough to be asked to be a beta reader, and I've got a request out there right now, you can't be nice. You can't be, you can't see everything that's good. You have to find the things that will make the book better. That's what authors like us want. We desperately want. And if you're an author who can't take constructive criticism, well,
You're in the
what can
wrong
we?
business.
You're in the wrong business.
Well, and I see some authors on social media being so crushed by 3-star reviews on Amazon. And I've said to a couple of them, you know, those can be very valuable because if there are a number of people who are saying the same thing, then that's something we need to look at. And so don't be discouraged by it. If all you get is 4 and 5-star reviews, well, that's telling you people like your book, hopefully, but it's not telling you why they like it. It's not telling you what they didn't like. And so I like the 3-star reviews. The worst review I ever got on the very first book of my series, the reviewer said, well, I don't like the characters and I don't like the setting, but I really like the way this author writes, so I'll probably read more of her books. And I call it the pat you or slap you in the face, pat you on the back review. And my takeaway from that was, okay, well, she likes the way I write. You know, the characters and setting just didn't work for her, and that's fine.
Right.
But you know, you really, it's like you said, if you can't take constructive criticism, then you're in the wrong business.
I
Because
agree.
if you don't get it from your editor or your beta readers, you're going to hear about it from your readers.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I've said this numerous times in previous podcasts. Once you put your work out there, it's not yours anymore. It belongs to the world, and they can
Be vicious.
be vicious. They can love it. They can hate it. They can say whatever they want to it because you've just given it to them as a gift.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. Yeah. Helen, where do you want people to find you and buy all your books?
Well, I'm on Amazon and the book is in Kindle Unlimited as well. Um, and you can get my books, all of my books in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. So it's something for everyone. I haven't gone wide because I like being in Kindle Unlimited and they won't let you do that. But most people know about Amazon. You can also go to libraries and request it. You can go to bookstores and request it because it's not wide in that it's on a bunch of platforms, but it's in wide distribution. So if those folks want it, they don't have to go through Amazon to get it.
Okay.
So, those are the places. And they can
Okay.
always contact me. And if they want a signed paperback copy, I'm happy to do that as well.
Email.
Yeah, it's Helen Starbuck Books at gmail.com.
Okay.
You can go on my website, helenstarbuck.com. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter, then you'll hear about things like new books and events and other things like that. So those are my deals.
All right, awesome. Helen, you will send me a couple of updated photos of you and
Will?
you with the book. I will have links and photos on my website at leadvillelaurel.com. And Helen, thank you again for writing edge of your seat works that just take you to different worlds and give you characters that you love and hate. And that's why reading is fun when you have a good author who writes well and takes you places. So
Thank
keep
you.
keep writing, keep dancing, and I will see you in December, if not before.
Okay. Thanks, Laurel.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
I appreciate you too as well. See you soon. Bye.